Okay, hello everyone. So this is our first video of the semester. So as I explained in the class, I record these videos over the weekend every week, and then I put them on the blog for Monday. Then I send you an email, letting you know that the video is uploaded. Then we will have this offline discussion about it in the class, which is from 10:45 to 2. So you can come in and watch the video and leave your comments and respond to each other's comments, so on. So yeah, it's might be a little awkward, for me especially because recording a video without having an audience, it's like I don't know, it's like screaming into a void. But I'll try to do my best and communicate what I want to teach, as well as I can. So yeah, let's go straight to our class. And these videos, by the way, are not going to be long. For through the semester, they're between maybe 15 to 20 minutes. I usually cover the essentials of the topic at hand, then leave a more detailed discussion for Wednesdays when we have a Zoom class for now. So yeah, as you know, this course is about the history uh, and politics of Latin America. This is like a historical survey. So we start from, we could start from 20,000 years ago, which is, the first settlements in Americas go back to, that time. But we keep it limited to the last 500 years, starting with the conquest. And then, as I said, we're going to cover a few turning points in this history up to the present moment. So, yeah, so one thing about this history, especially about the pre-Columbus era, which is important to know, is that we didn't really know much about it until very recently. Maybe up to the 19th century, we knew very little about the history of Americas before the conquest, before Christopher Columbus arrived here. And it's not surprising, this is like the kind of the pattern that has happened everywhere in the history of colonialism. That when a nation goes and colonizes another nation, especially in the modern era, one of the first things they do, they almost obliterate all signs of the presence of any civilization, anyone before them. So then they pretend as if they have conquered an empty land, right? A terra incognita, as they say in Latin, and kind of uncharted territory. And they introduce themselves as the discoverers, as people who kind of bring life, bring human life to that piece of land. In doing so, they, erase the indigenous history, usually, the indigenous culture, the indigenous history. And a lot of times, there's one, that's the main reason we know so little about the indigenous cultures around the world, especially in, like the so-called periphery of the European empires, which includes, Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and Americas, North America included too. And one kind of main reason for that is that this has been the practice of colonizers through history, that in order to justify the violence they usually, inflict to different degrees in different cultures, depending on the historical period, in order to justify that, they, pretend like that nothing existed before they arrived. Columbus did the exact same thing, and if you look at the history of colonialism in Africa and Middle East, Asia, you kind of keep running into the same, historical theme. So one, really important task, for any historian is trying to revive and retrieve these obliterated cultures. to go, to like the, I don't know, architectural evidence, if there's anything left, textual evidence, those are usually the most important and the most useful ones, and kind of reconstruct, like a civilization from the ashes of history, right? From the ruins that colonialism has left behind. And this has been the practice since the 19th century. That's how we know about the Aztecs, we know about the Mayas, we know about the Incas, and all of these really incredible civilizations in the Americas that existed and flourished before the Europeans arrived. But their basically existence and their significance have been, for the most part, completely kind of trampled on and forgotten. So yeah, so just to clarify one term that I've been using, and this is the like the title of this course, but we need to talk about it a little bit. Is why do we call this part of the world Latin America, right? What's Latin about it? That's actually another interesting, kind of story of how kind of colonialism sort of names things or gives new names to things that they colonize, and then they kind of turn it into a fact as if from the beginning of history this has been the case. So the phrase Latin America is actually a very recent one. You can kind of trace it back to the early 19th century, and there were like anthropologists, European, especially French anthropologists, who, through like research, I mean, research in quotation marks, a lot of it was pretty dubious and unfounded. But anyway, they came up with, like anthropological theories about the indigenous people of Americas, about Native Americans. And they decided that they must be, like their ancestors must be from Southern Europe, from like the Mediterranean area, from Spain, France, Italy, that area. And they kind of came up with this theory, as I said, based on really shaky evidence, uh, because it had like a domestic consumption inside Europe, right? It had like local consumption. It made sense for them in their fights in the context of the European politics. So, in terms of like ethnic categorizations, back then they divided Europe into three categories: the Slavs, which were Eastern Europeans and Russians; the Anglo-Saxons, the British, the UK, and part of Scandinavia; and then the Latins, which was Southern Europe, the Mediterranean region. By kind of creating this historical story about the ancestors of Native Americans, they wanted to kind of present them as their allies in the fight over politics in Europe. And so that's how they called this part of the world Latin America, and that name has really kind of stuck to this day. Um, yeah, so as I said in the beginning, again, like a lot of the history and evidence has been obliterated, but one thing we know for sure is that this region of the world have been populated for at least 20,000 years. So the first signs of the earliest signs of the settlement in Latin America goes back to 25,000 years ago, and as we know now, there were hunter gatherers who moved up from the northern Asia, from the steppes of northern Asia, north of China and Siberia. They crossed this this bridge, this land bridge into Americas, and then they made settlements there. So it's doesn't really make a lot of sense to us now because we don't have, because like the geography of the world, like like the shapes of continents and seas have changed from that era. But this the map that we have here, uh, this on your blog, it will be the first image. It kind of explains it very well. So you see in this map, if you now go to it and click on it to open it, or just look at it on the blog, here you see that this on the right, as you see, there's like a vertical line coming from the top of the map to the bottom. That's to the left of that is Alaska, and then on the other side of it is Russia. So that's if you go far north, you will see that like the tip of the Alaska and the northeast of Russia, they're actually very pretty close to each other. Right, they're separated now by the ocean, but that was not the case. As you see that line, is like a kind of a broken line in the middle of the map. This is the closest kind of point, between the U.S. and Russia. So back then, 20,000 years ago, this was actually all land. So the sea levels had gone down because of like changes in the climate. And this area was basically like a step, that connected Americas to the north of Asia. That's how 20,000 years ago those like first hunter gatherers, or at least as old as we know about them, uh, they kind of crossed this land bridge into what we call now America, and they kind of gradually spread throughout the continent, came all the way into the center, and then down and populated Latin America in a very kind of slow, gradual process that took thousands of years. And by the time the Europeans arrived there, uh, I believe there were like about 150 million people settled in Americas already. Mm. And there were like cities in the America in the pre-Columbus America that were larger actually than London and Paris. Like the capital of the Maya, which is Mexico City now. Back then, it had like a couple of million people as a population, much much larger than Paris and London at the time. Um, so yeah, but since sea levels, rose and that land bridge went underwater, that kind of point of contact was sort of cut off, and that's why I mean, the Europeans didn't know about the existence of this continent for thousands of years, right up to the 15th century. So in the 15th century, so now we're going to talk about like the beginning of the conquest, just how it all started. Then next week we go to the accounts of what happened. In the 15th century, there was a guy who's basically now probably one of the most famous people in the history of human beings by the name of Christopher Columbus. Uh, Columbus was an Italian, actually. He was from Genoa, and he was an obsessive sailor. I mean, he was a guy who just loved sailing around the world at a really early age. As a teenager, he had really traveled pretty far out of his hometown, uh, down the coast of Africa, and all the way down to Asia and other places. And he was a really kind of avid sort of student of geography and astronomy too. So he was really dedicated to sailing and like the discovery of basically new lands around the world, to going with getting on a ship and going as far as he could to find out about other people and other lands. Um, he married a Portuguese woman, and that's how he ended up in today Portugal. and joined the Royal Navy of Portugal at the time. Um, so this coincides with a really interesting period in the history of like trade and capitalism, which explains a lot about why he set out to discover America, or discovered actually, set out to go to India and ended up in America, which I will explain in a minute. So let's go to our second uh, image here, which is if you look at it in your blog, this is the map of the the spice trade in the medieval times in like 12th, 13th, 14th century. As you see here, um, so the left of the map, as you see, is all Europe, and the right side of it is Asia. And the way it worked was that there were spices produced in India and China mainly, and the spice trade was probably the most kind of lucrative business back then, and a lot of like the wealth of Europe came from that. They would just bring you know all kinds of goods to Asia and kind of exchange them with the spices and bring them back to Europe and sell them. So that's how the merchants made a lot of money. Like Venice, that's how Venice basically became Venice through spice trade. So anyway, if you look at this map, you'll see a really interesting kind of phenomenon here. That even though you have lots of roads here, like the Silk Road is on the right, and then you have this massive distribution network throughout Europe. But there is one city or one point on this map that is absolutely crucial to this network, and that is the city of Constantinople, which is in today Turkey. So if you see here, there are like two, bodies of water between Europe and Asia, or what's now Middle East, right? So um, this is the no, I don't know how to really kind of show it to you without having the marker on the map. But anyway, if you look at this, or you can maybe enlarge the map and find the name Constantinople on it. It's right at the contact point of two C's in the middle of the map. Okay, so everything went through this city, and from Asia to Europe and back, and it was basically the most important trading sort of center in the world at the time, and it was a part of the Roman Empire for I think maybe about hundreds of years. I'm not sure how many centuries now. So in 1470, in the year 1470, Constantinople fell to the Muslims, to the Ottomans, who kind of set out or staged a rebellion and drove the Romans out of their lands. When that happened, then there was like a sudden change in the dynamics of the trade, because the Ottomans who took over Constantinople, they cut off the access of the Europeans to Asia. So in 1471, all of a sudden, sort of the main artery of business and trade, right, which brought a lot of money into Europe, was cut off. And the Europeans who've been really kind of flourishing, making a lot of money off of this trade, suddenly like their economies began to shrink, and they had to do something about it. Now, this coincides with the time that Christopher Columbus lives in Portugal, um, and so if you come to the left of the map, the like the where today Spain is located. You see, there's like the Atlantic begins there, and what they had was a huge, uh, unexplored body of water west of Spain, right? So Columbus' idea was that now that they have cut off our access to Asia, through the land, maybe if I just, take to the sea on the west, hmm, then I can kind of go around to India, right, without having to go through Turkey and Persia and elsewhere. So, they already, a lot of them, people knew that the Earth was a sphere, and they thought that Columbus at least thought that we can travel westward towards India and end up there, so we can do like trade directly with Indians without having to go through Asia. So he submitted this proposal to the king of Portugal, and they accepted it, and that's how it all started. The voyage westward, which led to the discovery of America, was actually what intended for India, as probably a lot of you know already. And when Christopher Columbus landed on on the Bahamas, on what's today called the Bahamas, he actually thought he was in India first, and that's why for like hundreds of years to this day, Native Americans have been called Indians. The first Native Americans he saw, he thought they were Indians, and that's what he called them, and that's how he addressed them in his letters, and that name sort of stuck to this day. That misunderstanding. So yeah, this is how this all started. Um, we're gonna go through what happened after the Columbus arrived next week, but there's one quotation that I have to kind of share with you now before we go, which is from the Columbus Diary, and this is the first entry after landing in the Bahamas. Um, he writes about the first Native Americans he meets. They ought to make good and skilled servants, for they repeat very quickly whatever we say to them. I think they can very easily be made Christians, for they seem to have no religion. If it pleases our Lord, I will take 6 of them to your Highness when I depart, in order that they may learn our language. So you see, this is the intention is so clear from the beginning. He has like two, ideas for how to deal with these people. First, to make them servants, which is slaves, right? And second, to make them Christians. So he was a missionary from the beginning. Like his two main ideas were, converting people to Christianity and enslaving them. And that's how it actually played out later, as we will see in the following weeks. All right, so we can wrap it up here. And yeah, I'm gonna post this on the blog, and I look forward to your comments. Talk to you guys on Monday. Take care.